So just as a matter of process, could you just say your name and then spell it for us so we have the correct spelling and everything?
Yeah, my name is Eva Jenson, EVA, and then Jenson.
Okay, great. So Eva, I'm just wondering, maybe we just start off talking a little bit about, where you grew up, if you're from this area or when you moved to this area, just a little bit of that personal history.
Yeah, I moved around a lot when I was younger, but I moved to Michigan in, let's see, when I was 11. I've been here for a while. And before that I lived in New Mexico and New York and Baltimore and Denver. And then I took some time and went out to the Bay Area a few years ago and was living out there for about a year.
Okay. In terms of your own identity, when do you remember first kind of questioning or trying to come to terms with, like, how you self-identify? I mean, at what age? What do you remember kind of?
Yeah, I think I was pretty young, probably around 9 or 10. I had good friends that were women, and I felt like it was more than just a friendship, and with a few of my friends. And I think that for me it was really natural when I was younger to have these feelings and not reject them, because my family is pretty open and they've always been supportive of finding out who you are and accepting that and not really putting restrictions. They're not religious at all. And so I think that originally I didn't have any struggle, but then when I moved here was actually when I found that amongst my friends it was something that wasn't accepted. And I think that it's part of adolescence that you're kind of different. I didn't fit in with the popular crowd and all it's different. But as far as my sexuality, that was not really something that I felt comfortable talking about. And when I did, a lot of my friends just kind of would change the subject. I don't know.
Okay.
Or think that I was like messing around or promiscuous or all those other stereotypes of the LGBT community that exist.
Maybe different than how your family responded to it, because from what you said, they're very open, very supportive, and maybe even how your friends responded to it. What was your sense of how sort of the larger community or society, the dominant culture, sort of viewed somebody like you? I mean, is that an issue in terms of your own struggle, or how do you negotiate just sort of having an identity that certainly was not the norm in the larger society?
Yeah, I think it depends on where I was. I went to Fountain Street Church a lot when I was in high school, and I was in the youth group there. And I found that that community was pretty accepting and didn't have any problem with it. But a lot of my my friends' parents, they may not cut me off or say anything that was really offensive, but you could tell that they didn't agree with it. Or if we had that conversation, they would say, "Oh, you bring in usually a religious aspect that you're doing something that's a sin, or your lifestyle is not in accordance with our beliefs." So, and I think in my work settings, a lot of times I felt that if I came out at work, then I would be treated differently because my coworkers were very religious. But yeah, I think it depends. Over time too, when I was younger, I tried to find groups. I think that I contacted maybe the network or something, but I think that when I was younger, I didn't really find that there was a space that was very inviting, or I just couldn't really find that. And now over time, I think, or maybe going to Grand Valley and finding groups there, I feel like it's changed a little bit, that community has been more vocal, or as far as organizing, just within the time that I've been in Grand Rapids.
When did you first become a student at Grand Valley?
That was in 2005 I started
Okay.
there.
Okay. And what's been your experience on campus in terms of the climate there around LGBT issues? I mean, obviously there's a resource center, there's several different student groups and whatnot, but what's your sense of how you think both students, faculty, and staff, you know, who self-identify as part of the LGBT community, what do you think the climate is for you, for them at Grand Valley?
I think it depends on the classes that I'm taking. I'm a liberal studies major, so in those classes I found people that are really open and are accepting of people of different backgrounds, of identities. But in my more generic classes, in my gen eds, I think that a lot of the students, they kind of put you in the box of being that one LGBT student, and so that's what you're going to talk about because that's your thing. And I think that sometimes when issues come up in class, some of the teachers don't know how to deal with just negotiating the space or telling students that we need to use this kind of language or we need to listen to this other opinion, and they almost just again change the subject or say, oh well, that's one opinion, but let's get back to what we're talking about, instead of integrating that as part of what the conversation may be about, whether it's religious studies or cultural studies. I think that some of the faculty don't have that information or that aren't LGBT, so they really don't know how to handle it.
So you think that maybe that there could be more done to kind of prepare faculty and staff to both how to talk about it, how to, you know, be more inclusive, training that would help them, you know, navigate with, you know, the growing number of students who are part of the LGBT community?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important when you have more of an authority figure or an older person that's running the classroom. They can have a huge influence on the people that are there. So if they were more trained and if they could really, you know, make a space for those conversations and be an ally to the student, then the student wouldn't feel as targeted or singled out.
How important do you think has it been, you know, both for you as a student or just other students, that there are resources, that there are organizations on campus that provide support and resources for you to both to grow and to also feel safe, you know, while you're on campus?
I think it's very important because I think that there are not only educational activities that happen with the resource center there that not only LGBT students but just students in general will go to. I think that those are really important. I went to one that was on bisexual stereotypes, and there were a lot of people there, and I think that the students really gained a lot from that. But I think that it is important to have those groups be visible because as a freshman coming into a school, you're looking for your group or people that might identify similar to you, and it's good to have those groups very visible.
You mentioned earlier the point that sometimes in class, you know, once it's known that you're an LGBT student, that you know, maybe you get treated differently, or that people might expect that that's all you want to talk about or something. That sort of, that people miss the point that for at least a lot of LGBT students or the LGBT community in general, that there's that the issue of around rights and of intersectionality is very important. I wonder if you could sort of speak to that in terms of how you're not sort of a one-issue focused person, or the LGBT community is not only concerned of things that are relevant, that is very narrowly focused around, you know, one's identity, but much larger justice issues.
Yeah, I think that I was in a Live 100 class, and I didn't come out to the class till maybe halfway or a little bit after that. And I think that for some of the students after I came out, they didn't have as much respect for what I was saying, or they put me in this category of being very liberal, which for them at home was the opposite of what they are, and it's very conservative. So I think that once you identify like that, people are gonna assume things or not want to listen to other things that you're saying. But as much as I don't want to marginalize that identity, I can say that I'm LGBT, but I try to also say in the same breath that I'm also Latina, that I'm also a woman, that I'm also American. It's you know, but I think a lot of times people just focus on that one thing because it's so different to them, and they can't get it out of their head.
Right, right. Yeah, you know, from some of the other students we've talked to, that we've interviewed, there's certainly a difference in terms of younger folks and maybe older folks in terms of the language that's used. So, you know, of not being wanting to be sort of labeled or sort of stuck in a box, and people using terms like gender variant and, you know, those kinds of things. I mean, what do you think about sort of the importance that language plays in all this in terms of how we name, you know, this sort of evolving human identity?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think that language is always changing, so to use different terms that may express how someone is feeling, or if it's not going to group a person into a certain category. For me, how I identify has definitely changed. When I came out, I said, you know, bisexual, or maybe I'm lesbian or something. For a while I used queer, because that is kind of non-assuming. People don't know. The problem with using queer that I've found at Grand Valley or other spaces where people aren't familiar with the language in the LGBT community is they still associate it with the negative connotations, and they think that you're using it in a condescending manner. So I have to be careful to really explain what that term means and why I'm using it. But I think that it changes. It changes. Everyone's identity is constantly changing. So.
Yeah. You know, living in the area and, you know, being social in West Michigan, you know, what would you say about in terms of like the larger cultural context? Or do you feel like there's adequate amount of sort of places and spaces, public spaces, where you feel safe to be who you are and not to be discriminated against? I mean, what's your experience of just feeling like, you know, if I want to go somewhere, are there adequate spaces, you think, available in West Michigan for somebody who identifies as LGBT?
I think so. I think that there are, with the younger community, with the younger people in town, I think that it's not as big of a deal. And for some of them, like maybe the very trendy groups, they're more open to different ideas, or that's always been the case. But I think that there are spaces. However, comparing it to somewhere like the Bay Area, where I spent some time, I found that the clubs here are very, they're very out, but they're very, which is good, and but they're very, I don't know, let's see, how am I trying to say? Trying to compensate for something, or feeling like they need to over-exaggerate the image or the LGBT, so it feels almost like forced. Whereas in the Bay Area, I think there are a lot of clubs that are known for being spaces of LGBT, but there aren't a million rainbow flags everywhere, and there aren't, I don't know, everyone's not going around with a sticker, and it just seems more natural to me. I don't know if I'm actually explaining that.
Yeah, no.
how I want to.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, definitely, definitely. You certainly acknowledged earlier in the conversation that there are certain elements in West Michigan, particularly sort of religious elements, people might say religious right, that, is certainly a part of the West Michigan reality here. And some of that, is institutional, and some of it, it's particular individuals and families who are not shy about being critical of and actually even trying to undermine efforts for more equality. I don't know if you have any direct experience with that, or just your own observations of kind of coming in contact with that dynamic that exists in West Michigan.
Yeah, I think that friends of mine that are very integrated into the religious community, they have a harder time, and I think that there are LGBT groups that are religious based. I don't feel like that's my space to go to, but I think that those are really important, and I found those around town. And but I think that I have a few friends that are part of the Black religious community, and they